It is 5:30 p.m. on a Saturday. You are standing in the checkout line at the grocery store. There are 3 people waiting behind you. The cashier scans your last item, tells you the total, and you reach for your card. You smile, you act normal, but on the inside? Your stomach just did a backflip. You slide the card into the chip reader and you literally hold your breath for those 3 agonizing seconds, just praying the screen says approved instead of declined. But there's no miracle today. You check your phone and the balance says $43.12. The groceries cost $52. And you just realized your car is making that rattling sound again. You know the one. The sound that sounds expensive. So, you're doing the mental gymnastics. Okay, I get paid on Friday. If I don't eat lunch for 3 days, and if I drive exactly 45 miles per hour to save gas, I might make it. We have all been there. It is that suffocating feeling of walking a financial tightrope with no safety net. And every time you try to save a little bit of money, maybe you scramble together $200, something breaks. The tire blows out. The dog eats a sock and needs the vet. The universe seems to know exactly how much you just saved, and it sends a bill for exactly that amount plus $10. It feels like you are running on a treadmill that's set a little too fast. You're sprinting, sweating, exhausting yourself, but you aren't actually moving forward. Here's the thing, you aren't crazy. And you aren't just bad with money. The math, and the psychology, confirms exactly what you're feeling. Getting from $0 to $1,000 is genuinely, mathematically, and psychologically the hardest thing you will ever do in your financial life. Harder than making your first $100,000. Harder than saving the next $10,000. But once you break that barrier, everything changes. My name is Dave, and I spend way too much time thinking about behavioral economics and the math of early compounding. If you're someone who have been struggling to save your first $1,000, make sure to hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if this helps you out. Today, we are going to break down why the system feels rigged against the beginner, and exactly, step by step, how to beat it. Let's start with a little physics. Bear with me here. In space travel, there is a concept called escape velocity. When a rocket tries to leave Earth, it burns about 80% to 90% of its total fuel just to get off the ground and break through the atmosphere. Why? Because gravity is strongest right at the surface. The rocket has to fight the full weight of the planet holding it down. Your finances work exactly the same way. When you are at $0, the gravity of life is at its absolute heaviest. When you have 0 savings, you have 0 margin for error. This is what economists call the volatility trap. Here's a scenario. Let's say you have $0 saved. You get a flat tire. That tire costs $200. You don't have $200. So, what do? You put it on a credit card. Now, because you have no savings, you probably don't have the cash flow to pay that card off immediately. So, you carry a balance. The average credit card interest rate right now is hovering around 24%. So that $200 tire? It doesn't cost you $200. Over a year of minimum payments, it costs you $250. Or $300. Now, imagine the person who has $1,000 in the bank. They get a flat tire. They transfer $200 from savings to checking. They pay the mechanic. Total cost? $200. This is what most people don't realize, it is expensive to be broke. When you are starting from 0, every single bump in the road pushes you backward because you are financing your emergencies. You are paying a premium for bad luck. That is the gravity holding you down. The first $1,000 is hard because you are trying to fill a bucket that has a hole in the bottom. But it's not just the math. If it were just math, we could all just plug numbers into a spreadsheet and be rich. The bigger problem is the gray matter between your ears. There is a psychological phenomenon called the goal gradient hypothesis. Essentially, humans work harder the closer they are to a reward. If you are running a marathon, the hardest mile isn't the last one, you can see the finish line then. The hardest mile is mile 2. You're tired, but you have so far to go that your brain can't even visualize the end. When you have $0 and you're trying to save $1,000, you are at mile 2. Let's look at the dopamine loop here. When you spend money, you buy the new sneakers, the video game, the nice dinner, you get an instant hit of dopamine. Immediate gratification. When you save money, you get nothing. Literally nothing happens. You take money you could have enjoyed today, you move it into a digital vault where you can't touch it, and your life doesn't look any different. You don't drive a better car. You don't wear better clothes. In fact, your life feels worse because you deprived yourself of that spending. Saving the first $1,000 requires you to fight your own biology. You have to trade a guaranteed dopamine hit today for a theoretical safety net tomorrow. And the human brain is famously terrible at that trade. Now, you might be thinking, okay Dave, this is depressing. You're telling me math is against me and my brain is against me. Yes. But knowing why it's hard is the first step to hacking the system. Because once you get that first $1,000, the physics flip. This is where it gets really interesting. And this is why the next $10,000 is actually easier than the first $1,000. When you are saving your first $1,000, 100% of that money comes from your labor. You have to trade your time, your sweat, your stress, your hours at the office for every single penny. The money is not helping you yet. It's dead weight. But watch what happens when you cross that threshold. Let's say you finally get to $1,000. You put it in a high-yield savings account. Right now, those are paying around 4% or 5%. That $1,000 is now an employee. It's a terrible employee, it only makes about $50 a year, but it's an employee that never sleeps, never takes a lunch break, and never complains. Now, let's scale this. When you are working toward your next $10,000, two things happen. 1. That safety net effect, remember that flat tire? When you have $1,000, the flat tire is just an annoyance. It doesn't force you into debt. It doesn't start a spiral of interest payments. You pay it, you move on. You stop sliding backward. This means every dollar you save actually stays saved. 2. Compound velocity, let's run the numbers. Let's assume you're investing and getting a 7% average return, standard S&P 500 stuff over the long haul. To get your first $10,000, it's mostly your own contributions. But once you have $10,000 invested, that money earns $700 a year without you touching it. By the time you have $100,000 invested, it earns $7,000 a year. Here is a stat that blew my mind when I first saw it. Charlie Munger, the late, great partner of Warren Buffett, famously said, "The first $100,000 is a batch, but you gotta do it." I don't care what you have to do, if it means walking everywhere and not eating anything that wasn't purchased with a coupon, find a way to get your hands on $100,000. Why? Because at $100,000, the compound interest starts to equal a part-time job salary. At that point, the wind is at your back. But you can't get to $100,000, and you can't get to $10,000, without the hardest fight of all, the first $1,000. Before we get to the how-to, we have to address the silent killer of savings. I see this all the time in the comments. Someone gets a raise. They finally have a little breathing room. And what happens? Oh, I can finally afford the HBO subscription. I can finally upgrade my phone. Look, I'm not saying you can't have nice things. But if you upgrade your lifestyle before you have your safety net, you are just building a taller tower on a shaky foundation. There is a concept called Parkinson's law. It states that work expands to fill the time available. In finance, its spending expands to fill the income available. If you make $3,000 a month, you spend $3,000. If you get a raise to $4,000, mysteriously, your expenses rise to $4,000. You don't even know where it went. It just vanishes. To save the first $1,000, you have to temporarily suspend Parkinson's law. You have to refuse to adapt to your income. Okay. We know the math is hard. We know the psychology is against us. So how do we actually bridge the gap? I'm not going to give you the generic advice of skip the latte. A $5 coffee is not why you're broke. You're likely broke because of the big three: housing, transportation, and food. Here is a 3-step tactical plan to get that first $1,000 in the next 90 days. Step 1, that's financial audit, the scary part. You need to print out your last 3 months of bank statements and credit card statements. Yes, print them on paper. There is something visceral about holding the data in your hand. Take a highlighter. Highlight every single subscription, every recurring charge, and every time you ate out. Total it up. I guarantee you, I promise you, you will find $50 to $100 a month leaking out of your account that you didn't even realize was gone. The gym membership you don't use. The streaming service you forgot about. The free trial that isn't free anymore. Cancel them. Ruthlessly. You can always sign up again later. But right now? We are in war mode. We need that cash. Step 2, the gap strategy. Saving money is just the difference between your income and your expenses. That's the gap. Most people try to widen the gap by cutting coupons. That has a flaw. You can only cut expenses so much before you starve. The other side is income. And this is where the modern economy is actually on your side. To get your first $1,000, you need to sell your way there. Look around your house. The average American household has $3,000 worth of unused items sitting in closets, garages, and attics. Old electronics, clothes, furniture. If you are serious about this, spend one Saturday listing things on Facebook Marketplace or eBay. If you can make $300 from selling junk and save $200 from cutting subscriptions, you are halfway to $1,000 in one weekend. It sounds simple, but nobody does it. Why? Because it's uncomfortable. It's annoying to meet a stranger to sell a blender. But remember, comfort is the enemy of the first $1,000. Step 3, the transfer. We talked about how your brain hates saving because it hurts. So, you have to bypass your brain. If you rely on willpower to save what's left at the end of the month, you will save $0. You need to set up an automatic transfer for the day after payday. Even if it is $25. If you make it automatic, you don't have to make a decision. Decision fatigue is real. If you have to decide to save every month, you will fail. If the robot does it for you, you'll adjust. You will be amazed at how quickly you learn to live on slightly less money if it's never in your checking account to begin with. I want to leave you with this image. Imagine pushing a boulder up a hill. That is your first $1,000. You are straining, your muscles are burning, and if you stop pushing for even a second, it rolls back over you. That is the danger zone. But the moment you crest the top of that hill, that's the $1,000 mark. Suddenly, you aren't pushing up anymore. You're pushing down. The boulder starts to roll on its own. It picks up speed. It picks up snow. It gets bigger and faster with less effort from you. That is the next $10,000. The reason most people stay broke is that they give up while they are still on the uphill slope. They push, they get tired, they let go, and the boulder crushes them. And then they say, "See? Saving doesn't work." It does work. You just quit before the physics shifted in your favor. Look, I know it's hard. I remember when I was starting out, staring at a bank balance that was barely 3 digits, feeling like I was never going to get ahead. The system is designed to keep you consuming, not saving. The algorithm on your phone, the commercials on TV, the peer pressure from friends, it's all designed to keep you at zero. Reaching $1,000 is an act of rebellion. It is you saying, "I am not going to be a victim of my circumstances anymore. It is going to be a grind." It might take you 3 months. It might take you 6. You might have to say no to your friends a few times. But I promise you, the view from the other side of $1,000 is worth it. The sleep you get when you know a flat tire won't ruin your life? That is priceless. So, here is my challenge to you: check your account today. Write down the number. Make a plan to find that first $100 this week. Sell something. Cancel something. Do an extra shift. Just start moving the boulder. If you found value in this, and you want to see more breakdowns on how to master your money psychology, don't forget to subscribe. And drop a comment below. What is the one expense you're going to cut today to start your fund? I want to see you guys holding each other accountable down there. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.